Hello, Sam from Tool Hut. I got a good one for you today. Got a Ford Festiva. The shop has replaced the transmission control module. We're going to go through the programming sequence, and I'm going to show you an error that my tech made, I made, and the shop made. Stand by. Hello, Sam from Tool Hut. Today's video should be titled, How Deep is the Rabbit Hole? I wanted to go over this one with you, not to essentially tell you how much I went down the rabbit hole, but maybe I can save somebody else from doing the same thing I did. I didn't think there was anything wrong with what I was doing, and in the end, if I'd have followed my gut, I would have been done with it a lot longer. And sometimes you just do that. I think you start down a path and you think that there's nothing wrong with the path you're taking, and in the end you find out that if you'd taken your traditional path or listened to your gut, you would have been done a lot faster. So today we have a 2014 Ford Festiva. That is a TCM. The shop has replaced the transmission control module, which is a very common procedure. But I sent one of my techs out. He plugged in an aftermarket scan tool, an Autel, and couldn't communicate with the transmission control module, and made an assumption that there was still something else wrong with the vehicle. I had the shop do some additional checks. They have a snap-on scanner. They could never get it to communicate. I went to the shop. The snap-on scanner was plugged in, and we continued to use the snap-on scanner, trying to determine why we couldn't communicate with this vehicle. In the end, the IDS saw the transmission control module on a network test, which I'll show you in the video, and ultimately the aftermarket scan tools would not communicate simply because the module wasn't programmed. So you got to keep your mind about that. I did not realize that was the case. I tell shops all the time to plug in your scanner and make sure you communicate before we come out. This tells me that it's not always the case. It's not the first time we've ran into it, but typically if the aftermarket scan tool won't communicate with it, neither will the factory scan tool. So, stand by. First thing we're going to do is we're going to get our IDS started up here. I did not record the aftermarket scan tools not communicating with it. I guess you're just going to have to take my word for it. We established communication with the PCM. Asked me if this is the correct. It is. So I can tell it yes. I have sped up most of this process for you, so hopefully it takes all the boredom out of it for you. So the first thing I'm going to do is a network test. Just because the other scan tools have got me kind of puzzled here. This is typically how I would have handled this if I'd have just plugged in my IDS from the beginning. So scroll all the way to the bottom, we see that the TCM passes the network test. Oh, alright. So let's go ahead and we're going to program it. We're going to do programmable module installation. The original module did not communicate, so there's no reason to plug it in first. Tells me it wants to do the as-built data. I select I am connected to the internet. It does not have this updated part number on the transmission control module, or on the transmission rather. This is a tag right on top of the transmission. Sometimes it's a little hard to see, but mine had a Charlie Apple 8 Paul part number, so I did not have the updated design or first design or whatever. Looks like it says later design. Anyway, mine did not have this. Tells me calibration is not found on my tester. Gonna hit the internet, battery up, blah blah blah. We all know this by now. Tells me there's multiple locations. It is going to program the transmission control module and the powertrain control module. I'm not real sure what it does to the powertrain control module, but obviously it does something, or the engine control module, whatever it decides to do here. Again, I've sped this process up for you, so it's not all boring watching the blue lines. It tells me key on. It never told me to key off, so I don't know why it's telling me to turn the key on again. Now it says key off. Key on. Well, this is the point that I put somebody else in the car. We're gonna it tells me multiple internal processes again. Key off, key on. It's gonna do the PCM real quick here. Like I say, I'm not real sure if it just does an update on it or if there's something actually goes in there for the change module. Anyway, it doesn't take very long to do, so. It goes through the programming process here. You do not lose your patch functionality, so you don't have to worry about doing any keys or nothing. At least we didn't. Tells me calibration's been loaded and checked. And now we're going to get on here to powertrain, get on to transmission, and we're going to do the TCM adaptive learning. There's 3 stops here that need to be done. Either set in the car or have somebody else set in the car. So the first thing we need to do is we need to learn this transmission range sensor. This is the park, reverse, neutral, drive, and low ranges. You have to tell it. Well, you'll see here. So it says perform adaptive learning. I'm going to tell it yes. Make sure it's in park. And then every position, you just move the shifter to that position and then you hit learn position. As soon as it turns green, you can move on to the next position. And then I just move the shifter 1 click at a time, back up through and make sure that they all still agree. Key off. Has to do a power down here. Again, this process has been sped up, so it does take about 45 seconds for it to power down. The next one is the shift drum. I just do them in order. I don't know if you need to do them in order. I know that it won't start until you do the transmission range configuration part there, so. Tells you put it in park with your brake foot on the brake. This is where you can hear the transmission starting to do some weird stuff. It is on a hoist. We could probably do this without the brake pushed, but we did have the brake pushed just to appease the computer. Key off. It wasn't rolling anywhere, I guess is what I'm saying. And if this is a manual transmission that's completely controlled by the computer, it does show that it's automatic in the vehicle, but it is ultimately stick shift. So now we have to do a clutch adaptive learn. This is always the fun part. Key on. You'll find out in the end if you need a clutch or not. Park and put on the brake. It's going to make a whole bunch of noises here during this process. Again, it's sped up. Then it wants you to start the engine. And then it wants you to put it to wide open throttle. Notice it doesn't take very long once you're at wide open throttle. It just wants it at idle. going to stabilize the idle, and then it's going to do some more calibrations here. So this can be kind of a finicky spot. Make sure that your air conditioning, rear defog, nothing like that is on. That can make the alternator work a little harder or the engine work a little harder, because you won't get this to pass. You'll have to start all over again. So it tells me the touch point of the clutch, key off. I don't know what the specs are for needing a clutch, but I'm sure they're in the service manual somewhere. Again, it wants to power down the TCM. Tells you the functions exiting. That we're going to exit here. And it says drive the vehicle. So essentially we're done here at this point. So it's up to the technician or up to the shop to drive it, make sure everything's working right at this point. I do not stick around to drive it. Thanks for watching. If you want to see some more videos like this, subscribe to the channel. Thumbs up, thumbs down. Hit the bell if you want to be notified as I'm releasing them. Questions, comments, concerns, criticisms, keep them clean down there, and I'll leave them. Otherwise, I'll delete them. I'll try to answer them. You can visit my website at toolhutusa.com. Have a great day.